Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to extend our tutorial on the employee vaccination management system. If you are not familiar with my channel, I would really suggest please go ahead and look at some of my playlists. Especially look at this one. This is the one that we are going to trailer after today. So this playlist right here has a whole bunch of videos, detailed tutorials that shows you step-by-step development process which you can use to develop a web-based CRUD application. And also in the last couple of videos I talked about how to add an external open source reporting system. So these are the two videos that I uploaded probably a couple of weeks ago. So this is actually an extension of that tutorial. Today what we are going to do is we're going to show how you can take that project and actually extend more and add a nice, like a dashboard type chart, like a visualization capability on this application. So what we're going to do today is we're going to extend this tutorial and add a pie chart to the existing application. The pie chart will kind of work as a dashboard. It will show you the overview summary of the vaccination status of all employees for the database. Okay, so without further delay, let's go ahead and get started. But before I start, please go ahead and subscribe my channel if you haven't done so, and click the like button and also the bell icon so that you can get notified of subsequent videos that is going to come in the future. Okay, the very first thing you're going to do is, of course, you're going to go and get the GitHub URL and check out the application. So this is basically the GitHub URL, and I'm going to check out my application under the C YouTube projects. That's where I always check out any applications. Now I will put all of this information in the description below of the video, so you will have it ready. So here it is. It's coming out, and that's good. Let's go ahead, go to that specific folder, which is going to be in this folder. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of files. So the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and import these applications to our Eclipse IDE. So if you have not have that Eclipse IDE installed, please go ahead and look at one of the previous videos. I think it's in one of the parts, either part 4 or 5. I have explained on how to download the Eclipse and then also install and all that business. So I'm assuming that you have the Eclipse installed. So I'm just going to go ahead and open the Eclipse. So this is the Eclipse IDE, and I'm going to go ahead and import my project. So what you want to do is you want to click on File, Import, and not an existing project. This is a Maven based project. So you want to go expand the Maven and say existing Maven project, click Next, and go to the folder where you downloaded or checked out the files from GitHub. So in my case, I checked out in YouTube projects and this one. And as you can see, it automatically found out the pom.xml. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Finish to let it import. Once the import is complete, let's go ahead and expand it, and we'll talk about the source code. One thing you will notice is that if you have followed the previous tutorial, this application expects that you already have the database tables. And if you follow the tutorials and also the previous two videos that I have, which I mentioned it in here, these two videos, especially on this one, it will actually show you how to import the employee vaccination table. So in order for this tutorial to continue, you would need that table. You must need that table. And also you must need the rest of the tables in the database, which that tutorial also goes through if you follow all of them, the entire series. Please do that if you don't have those tables. So I'm just going to go ahead and open my SQL Workbench, which will connect to that database. So this is the database that it relies on, EVMS, and it expects these 3 tables, and that's where all the web application actually interacts with. So but this chart will be mainly interacting with the employee vaccine data, which you can see right here, all of them. And again, the way you get this MySQL Workbench, it is also described properly in, I think, tutorial like step number 5, I think, in the series. So please go ahead, go through the whole thing, and you will know how to install it, download it, and create the database, and create the tables, import the tables, and all that business. So anyway, I just want to let you know that these 3 tables you must need, and you must need that schema as described in the previous tutorial in order to continue with this one. Okay, so I assume that you all have that. I'm just going to go ahead and run this to show you how it looks. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and expand the very first package, and this is the application. Right click, and I'm just going to go ahead and run the application. Let it do its thing, and it's going to come up in a second. So the server has been started. I'm just going to go ahead and launch the application now. So let's open a tab and go to localhost 8080. You should see a login page, and of course the user ID is admin if you want to log in as an admin, and the password is TSET, test backwards. So go ahead, log in, and voila, you should see a nice chart like this. And you will have every other features that was already there, like there was this vaccine types code screens, and there's also the reports that was running the Penta in the background. So there's some nice features on this chart. So this kind of looks like a little dashboard. What this is telling you is how many of your employees are vaccinated. So as you could see that only 54% are not vaccinated yet. And the rest of them are vaccinated. It also shows you what type of vaccine they have. So like COVID-19 Covaxin, that's like Pfizer one, I think. 47 of them has that. The Moderna one, you can kind of like put your mouse over it, you can see, what vaccine and who has what. So that's kind of it. And it even takes you further. If you click on one of these slices, like this one is COVID vaccines, and it takes you straight to the edit screen of the vaccine types. You can edit the description. This is just as a demo purpose. I just put that in there to show you. You can click on different slices, and the different slices can do different things. Going back to the chart again, now this large slice right here, the way I coded it is the large slice basically shows who is not vaccinated. If you click on that, that's going to launch the report. So that's going to launch the PDF report, this one right here. So let's go and click on that, and the process has been started. As you can see, it's kind of spinning right here, and you can also kind of see it. There you go, the report has been launched. So that's kind of it that this thing does, but it is very important to kind of note that you can literally take any application that's using Springboot or Thymeleaf with the MySQL and take it to the next level. Add a nice BI type capability with the reporting system right here, and you can also add a nice dashboard. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go look at the code, how this is happening. So when you look at the code, the very first thing we have to think about is we are adding a chart library, chart capability basically. So that means we need to first add that library into our Maven configuration file, right? So let's go look at that first. So in Maven, I had to add this little piece right here where it says I'm going to use the JFreeChart. By the way, that's a very neat library. It's an open source library, so it's all free with the open source license, and you can use it. And it has lots of different types of capabilities to do different types of charting. So it's pretty neat. And if you're interested, I am going to put the link in the description below of that JFreeChart site that's this, and you can literally go look at the samples and different API docs and all kinds of things that this thing can do. Anyway, back to the code. So I had to add that to make sure that I can use the library. The next step is, of course, to think about, in order to do the chart, I need to do a query, right? So if you look at the application, the chart basically showing that out of that employee vaccine table, we need to kind of count all the list of employees with different types of vaccination that's grouped differently, right? So this person has COVID-19 Covaxin, this list of person has COVID-19 Moderna, and so on. And then there's the one that doesn't have any vaccine, we can say not vaccinated yet. So somehow we have to come up with a query. Now, and then based on the query, we have to come up with the data set, and based on the data set, then we use the technology to show the chart. So we'll kind of go follow that trail. So one thing that we have to start with is a repository that's called employee vaccine repository. So that's the first file that we need to add. And this is nothing but a repository that extends from standard crude repository of Springboot that you have to provide that what type of ORM that you are connecting to and what is the data type of the primary key. In this case, we're not using it for ORM, we're using it mostly to get a data, a list of queries. So I just kind of have to put this thing vaccination type in there, and string is basically the ID of the vaccination type, which is kind of like just the character. But the main goal is to come up with a query and let the Hibernate ORM Springboot deal with running the query and get the data set automatically. So the way you do it is use this annotation. Here's the query right here. And if you run the query, you're basically going to get the data that gives you the list of counts and the corresponding vaccines. So let me show you. Okay, I just copied and pasted the query. The only thing I updated is basically translated this text right here, which was dynamically added by this identifier right here. So it's nothing but just a text not vaccinated yet. And then let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to select this and run it. As you could see, it shows just the ID of the vaccine basically, and then what is the type of vaccine that it's receiving and the details about it, and then how many from the employee has received the vaccine. So that's basically it. And then all this is saying is that this thing basically saying if you're getting a null, just set it to -1, and for the text, if you're getting a null, that means that person has not been vaccinated, just make not vaccinated yet, and so on. And the vaccine type is, of course, not vaccinated is nothing, so just put an empty string. That's all this is saying. It's a fairly simple query, getting it from employee vaccine and getting all the information and grouping by the vaccine types to get the counts. So that's all this is. So all you see on the pie chart is a combination of this, and the count. That's all it is. All right, so once we have the query and then we set up our ORM, and with this annotation, we kind of tie this query with the result set that is going to come out of this method right here. It's going to get us a list of employee vaccine count bean interface. So that is like an interface on Java that has to strictly follow the convention of the selection attribute. So there's an ID, there's a name, there is a type, and then there's a vaccine count. So if I go to this interface right now, which is nothing but packaged in this bean, it's right here. This interface, as you could see, has a get ID, get name, get type, get vaccine count. With that interface, of course, I had to create a bean. So if I go to the bean, implements that interface, as you could see, and of course it's serializable because it needs to be streamed in the memory. It's safer to make it serializable. And naming convention follow exactly the same 4 columns: ID, name, type, vaccine count. And this is nothing but having a constructor and then all the getters and setters in 2 strings. So first I got those 2. And the next step is to fetch the data using a service class. So I had to add another new package called service and a new class called employee vaccine service. All this thing has, it is auto wiring that employee vaccination repository, and then just has one method, basically says find vaccine count. It basically just calls that method find employee vaccine count that we just added into the repository, and it gets it reference from this right here. So calls this method right here, going back to service class, and just loops through it and constructs a list of that bean, employee vaccine count bean, and then just returns that list. So this is the first stage of getting the query, getting the right data, and also getting the data back so that we can utilize it in the Java code. The next step is, of course, we need to show it in the home screen. So find out what the home screen is, which is going to be in the login controller right here. Login controller, this is where it shows the home page, typically, right? That's what it was. So now, as you could see, there's a whole bunch of code that I added. This is nothing but all it's doing is, in this code, if you could see it, it is first creating a default Pi dataset, and the default Pi dataset is basically a class that is part of the JFreeChart. As you can see, this is part of the JFreeChart right here. Okay, and all you have to do there is you have to set what is the Pi set's attribute and how many count you have. So that's all this is doing. So if you go through this code right here, it calls that for employee vaccine count, iterates through it, and in the data set, all it's doing is basically setting the value, the name of the slice and how many counts. So that's the main thing. And it does other things, like this is what it's doing is basically saying that based on the slice name, if it's not vaccinated yet, you need to show this URL so that whenever they click on it, it goes to the report. But if it is vaccinated, well, the person is vaccinated and it's that vaccine, valid vaccine name, then just go ahead to the vaccine type edit page. That's all this is. So that's how you set kind of like the URL map. And because of all this, I actually literally created another separate class called chart that deals with all this. So it's in packaging the chart, and this is nothing but, and it also has the noted exception. So all this chart Java code does is basically has a couple of getters to get the file name and the graph URL so that it can be rendered on a page, and then it basically has a method called generate pie chart that just uses the JFreeChart API to render the chart as a servlet, and the servlet needs to be registered into the Springboot factory basically. So that's all this is. And it has the custom Pi URL generator that is also part of the JFreeChart's capability, that it just uses its API to generate this custom URLs. And that's all this is doing. So nothing fancy. And that's what's being called, if you look at this code right here, that it initiates the chart, and then eventually it basically calls the generate of the pie chart right here and passes the right parameters, and then it goes and sets a whole bunch of models attribute, like what's the chart's title, the width and height, because it will be rendered as an image file with maps, image maps as part of the HTML. And then what's the file name, and what would be the URL of the servlet that it will get the image maps from, and then the chart's name and other different texts, how many vaccinated, how many not vaccinated, stuff like that. So that's all this is, and then it just comes back home. So once the rendering piece of information that is saved on the memory, the next thing is, of course, we need to show it. So the next thing is to go touch the page, and the page is nothing but home.html. That's where the Thymeleaf code is. So it used to have just a welcome thing right here. I just kind of rearranged it. That went to one div. This whole thing went on a nice little alert box primary. And then if you look at this little div right here, that div is basically saying that, hey, if you have a role of admin, that means if someone is an admin, they get to see the chart. If someone is not an admin, they only get to see some text message, and I'll come back to it in a second. I'll show it to you. So that's all this code is. As you can see, that has role user, only show on page text, has role admin, show the chart. And here is the magic happens. As you can see, this is nothing but an image tag, but the image tag is basically saying that this image is based on this image map source, and this is actually nothing but a chart servlet that is being rendered based on this thing right here. As you can see that it's getting the context path of the application, then slash chart is nothing but a chart servlet that the JFreeChart provides. You just have to provide the file name, what file name it is that you are building, or what file name you want your image to be called. So that's all this is. It could be anything, but I just kind of made it a unique name, and then that's all this is. And let's go back to the home.html. So graph URL and the width and the height, which we set it, if you remember, on the controller. And then, of course, the use map of the file, that is basically what the file name would be and what text would be shown on the image map. So it's nothing but it's rendering an image based on a map, image map, whole bunch of coordinates in there. And that coordinates, you don't have to worry about it. It's the chart, JFreeChart automatically rendering for you, giving an URL as a servlet. So the next step is, okay, now we're talking about all this servlet that the chart renders, the servlet. How do we register? So one more change we have to do is we got to go to the application and we have to add this little piece right here. It's basically saying that, hey, add this bean. What this bean is doing is it's a registering bean, and this bean is registering something called a display chart servlet. And this thing is not my code, it's some code that JFreeChart provides for you, the display chart servlet. And then you just basically go ahead and render it as /chart. You could call it /mychart, then you have to go change this space to call /mychart. So you name it the way you want it. But basically the concept is you have to use their display chart servlet, then map it to a servlet context or URI, and then basically show the image map. So that's all that is. And when you run it, of course, the magic shows up, which is the chart right here. And if you put your mouse over here, or you can right click and you can actually save, you will see that you can save it as an image. So this is nothing but just an image that being rendered via servlet. So that's about it. I think if you have any questions, please do ask in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. But if this entire video of adding a nice dashboard with a chart added a value to your day-to-day development skill, please do subscribe and do hit the like button and also hit the bell icon so that I can bring more videos in the future with more tutorial, more knowledge. And of course, feel free to message or comment at the bottom and asking me what are the type of skills that you want to learn, and I'll do my best to come up with the videos next. Thanks a lot. You have a great day. Bye now.